As you listen, ask yourself, have you ever lost someone because of pride? Share your thoughts in the comments. The city of Manhattan glittered beneath Ethan Caldwell's penthouse like a crown made of glass and gold. From 50 stories above the streets, he looked down at a world he had conquered: stock markets that reacted to his words, boardrooms that waited for his approval, politicians who returned his calls on the first ring. At 36, Ethan Caldwell was one of the youngest self-made billionaires in America. Tall, white, sharp-jawed, controlled, always in tailored black suits that looked like armor. His reflection stared back at him from the floor-to-ceiling windows, polished, untouchable, distant. But behind the perfection lived a man who had learned one rule early in life. Never let anyone get close enough to hurt you. Mr. Caldwell, his assistant murmured through the Bluetooth in his ear, the gala speech is in 20 minutes. Keep it brief, Ethan replied flatly. I don't like wasting time. He turned away from the window and picked up his phone. Business headlines flooded the screen. Caldwell Global breaks record profits. Ethan Caldwell, America's most eligible bachelor. The man who never fails. He scoffed softly. Failure wasn't allowed in his life. Not since his father walked out on their family when Ethan was 12. Not since he watched his mother cry herself to sleep while bills piled up. Not since he promised himself he would never depend on love again. Love was messy. Love was weak. Love was a liability. That belief had shaped him, and it had cost him more than he was ready to admit. In a quieter part of the city, Nia Harrington adjusted the strap of her handbag and stepped out of a modest apartment building. She didn't live in a penthouse. She didn't own a luxury car. But she carried herself with a grace money couldn't buy. A black woman in her early 30s. Warm brown skin. Soft natural curls. Eyes that held intelligence, kindness, and carefully hidden scars. She worked as a creative director for a nonprofit that supported underprivileged youth. Her job paid modestly, but it fulfilled her. She believed in purpose, in empathy, in love even after it had hurt her deeply. She paused at a crosswalk, scrolling through emails. A familiar name flashed on her screen. Ethan Caldwell. Her heart tightened before she could stop it. She didn't open the message. Instead, she locked her phone. Some doors were better left closed. They hadn't met in luxury. They'd met 2 years earlier at a charity art event before the headlines turned their relationship into gossip. Back then, Ethan had been different with her. Softer, less guarded, almost human. He used to call her late at night just to hear her voice. I don't let many people see the real me, he once admitted quietly. Maybe that's because you've been hiding from yourself, she replied with a teasing smile. She had believed in him, believed he could be more than cold ambition. She had loved him, deeply, openly, fearlessly. And then he hurt her, badly. Ethan adjusted his cufflinks in the mirror. For a split second, her name crossed his mind. Nia. The memory hit like a bruise. The last time they spoke replayed in his head, her eyes glassy with tears, her voice shaking, her dignity cracking under betrayal. You chose your image over us, she had whispered. I chose what keeps me in control, he had replied. Too cold, too proud, too late. He swallowed hard now, jaw tightening. Control. That word haunted him. At her office, Nia reviewed designs for an upcoming fundraiser. Her coworker smiled. You okay? You seem distracted. I'm fine, Nia replied softly. But when she was alone again, she opened Ethan's email at last. Subject, I owe you more than silence. Her chest tightened. She didn't reply. She wasn't sure if she was ready to reopen wounds she had worked so hard to heal. That night, fate nudged them toward each other. Ethan arrived at the charity gala in a sleek black car, cameras flashing, reporters calling his name. Across the ballroom, Nia entered quietly, wearing a simple but stunning evening dress, elegance without excess. For a moment, neither of them noticed the other. Then Ethan looked up and saw her. Time slowed. Her laughter, her posture, the familiar warmth he had lost. His chest tightened. Across the room, Nia felt it, that strange pull she never fully escaped. She turned. Their eyes met. Silence stretched between them. Unspoken history, unfinished pain, unresolved love. And somewhere beneath it all, the guilt that would change him forever. The moment that broke her and haunted him. The ballroom shimmered like a palace built for people who never feared consequences. Crystal chandeliers spilled gold across polished marble floors. Wealth whispered from every corner: couture gowns, tailored tuxedos, champagne flutes that cost more than some family's monthly rent. This was Ethan Caldwell's world. And yet, standing just a few steps away from him, was the woman who had once made that world feel irrelevant. Nia Harrington. For a brief second, neither of them moved. The music softened into a distant hum. Conversations blurred. The world narrowed to the space between them. She looked different, stronger, more composed. But her eyes still carried the softness he remembered and the pain he had caused. Ethan swallowed. Nia, he said quietly. Her name felt heavier than any business deal he had ever signed. She nodded politely. Ethan. Formal. Controlled. Not warm. Not open. It stung more than he expected. You look well, he added. I am, she replied simply. Not because of him. In spite of him. Silence settled between them, thick with memory. He remembered late-night conversations in his penthouse. Her laughter in his kitchen. The way she once rested her head on his chest and whispered, "You don't have to carry everything alone." And he remembered the night it all shattered. The night guilt was born. Rain hammered against the glass walls of Ethan's office. The city outside blurred into streaks of silver and gray. Nia stood across from him, nervous but hopeful, fingers curled around the strap of her purse. You asked me to come, she said gently. What's going on? Ethan didn't meet her eyes. His publicist waited outside. The media was circling. Rumors were spreading about their relationship. His investors were uneasy. He had been told to distance himself, to protect his image, to avoid complications. He chose business. He chose control. Over her. Nia, he began, voice measured. This relationship. It's becoming a distraction. Her face tightened. A distraction? I'm under pressure, he continued. The press. The board. My reputation. People are watching everything I do. She stepped closer. So we face it together, she said softly. That's what partners do. He looked at her then, and instead of holding on to her, he retreated. I can't afford emotional liabilities, he said coldly. It needs to end. The words sliced deeper than he realized. Her eyes widened, disbelief flashing. Ethan, she whispered, voice trembling. You love me. He hesitated, and that hesitation became his betrayal. This isn't about love, he replied. It's about survival. Her breathing faltered. So I'm something you discard when it becomes inconvenient. That's not what I meant, he said, but the damage was already done. Tears welled in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. You promised I wasn't just another option, she said quietly. You promised I mattered. He looked away. Silence screamed between them. Finally, she nodded once slow, dignified, shattered. Then I hope your empire keeps you warm at night, she whispered. And she walked out. He didn't stop her. Now, standing across from her at the gala, Ethan felt the weight of that moment crush his chest. I never apologized, he said softly. Nia gave a faint, distant smile. You never needed to, she replied. Your choice explained everything. I was wrong, he admitted. She studied him, cautious, guarded. Wrong doesn't undo hurt, she said quietly. I know, he whispered. The orchestra shifted into a slower melody. People around them danced, laughed, toasted. But between them, time felt suspended. I told myself I did the logical thing, Ethan said. That I chose strength, stability, power. He swallowed hard. But every night after you left, my penthouse felt emptier than the streets below it. She looked away. I thought success would drown out regret, he continued. It didn't. It amplified it. Her voice was calm, but edged with old pain. You didn't just end a relationship, she said. You made me feel like I wasn't worth fighting for. His throat tightened. That's the part that haunts me, he admitted. I hurt the only person who loved me without conditions. Nia folded her hands together, grounding herself. For a long time, she said softly, I blamed myself. He frowned. You shouldn't have. I wondered if I was asking for too much, she continued. If loving me felt like a burden. She met his gaze steady, unbroken. But I learned something after you. What? He asked. I learned that love should never feel like something you have to beg for. The words hit him harder than anger would have. Ethan exhaled slowly. I've spent 2 years replaying that moment, he said. Every time I sign a contract, every time I close a deal, I hear your voice asking why I wasn't brave enough to choose you. His voice lowered. I didn't realize until I lost you that you were the only thing in my life that wasn't transactional. Her expression softened just slightly. But guilt alone doesn't fix anything, she said gently. It just reminds you of what you broke. The band shifted songs. A waiter passed with champagne, but neither of them reached for a glass. Why are you telling me this now? Nia asked. Because I'm tired of being the man who runs from what matters, he replied. And I don't expect forgiveness, but I couldn't keep pretending I wasn't sorry. She considered him quietly. People change, she said. But change takes time. I'm willing to take that time, he whispered. As the night deepened, something fragile stirred between them. Not reconciliation. Not yet. But acknowledgement. History. Pain. Love wounded, buried, but not dead. And as Nia walked away from him later that evening, realized something that terrified him more than any business risk. The guilt he carried wasn't punishment. It was a doorway toward redemption, toward accountability, toward a love he might still have a chance to earn if he became a better man. When pride fights love and healing feels dangerous. The next morning, the city moved like nothing had changed. Traffic surged. Stock markets opened. People laughed, rushed, planned futures. But inside Ethan Caldwell, the previous night echoed like a storm that refused to fade. He stood in his office, staring at a skyline he once believed defined success. Now it felt hollow. His executive assistant entered. Your board meeting starts in 10 minutes. Delay it, Ethan replied quietly. She hesitated. That's not like you. I'm aware. He loosened his tie, a rare crack in his armor. The truth pressed against his chest. He had built an empire on control. But he had lost the only woman who ever saw his humanity. And seeing Nia again had reopened everything. He tried to distract himself with work, financial reports, investment strategies, global expansion plans. But numbers blurred. Instead, memories surfaced. Her laughter in his kitchen, the warmth of her hand in his. The moment she walked out proud, broken, dignified. He clenched his jaw. I don't deserve another chance, he muttered to himself. But guilt whispered back. You don't deserve to stay the same, either. Across town, Nia Harrington sat in her office, staring at a blank computer screen. Her coworker, Maya, leaned against the doorway. You okay? Maya asked. Nia forced a small smile. I'm fine. You saw him last night, didn't you? Nia looked away. I did. And? She exhaled slowly. He apologized. Maya raised a brow. And did it work? Nia paused. It stirred things I worked hard to quiet, she admitted. And I hate that. Later, alone, Nia stood by her apartment window. Rain streaked down the glass, eerily similar to the night he ended things. She pressed a hand against her chest. She remembered waiting for his calls, believing in his promises, imagining a future that collapsed in one conversation. Her voice whispered into the quiet room. I can't let him hurt me again, even if a part of her still loved him. By afternoon, entertainment blogs exploded. Ethan Caldwell reunites with former girlfriend at charity gala. Is the billionaire rekindling his romance? Ethan slammed his tablet onto his desk. Damn it, his PR manager called immediately. We need to control the narrative, she insisted. Your image can't afford emotional drama. He almost laughed. 2 years ago, he would have agreed. Now, the words tasted wrong. I'm done letting optics dictate my heart, he said quietly. There was silence on the line. Later that week, fate cornered them. Nia attended a community fundraising event for underprivileged youth. She didn't expect to see him, but when she looked up from greeting donors, Ethan stood there, not in a tuxedo, not behind cameras, just him, simple suit, no armor. Their eyes met again. I didn't know you supported this organization, she said cautiously. I do now, he replied. You inspire good work. She folded her arms lightly. You don't need to impress me. I'm not trying to, he said honestly. I'm trying to be better. The words sounded unfamiliar on his tongue. They stepped aside, away from the crowd. Children laughed nearby, unaware of the emotional battlefield forming between the two adults. You shouldn't be here, Nia said quietly. It complicates things. I know, he replied. But walking away from you is the one thing I regret most in my life. Her jaw tightened. Regret doesn't equal change, she said. People say sorry when it makes them feel lighter, not when it makes the other person heal. He nodded. Then let my actions carry the weight, he said softly. You hurt me deeply, she said. You don't get to re-enter my life just because guilt finally caught up with you. His chest tightened. You're right, he said. I don't expect access. I only hope for the chance to earn trust, even if it takes years. She looked at him for a long moment. You don't understand how long it took me to rebuild myself, she said. To stop wondering why I wasn't enough. Pain flickered in his eyes. You were always enough, he said quietly. I was the one who wasn't brave enough. Silence wrapped around them. A little boy nearby ran past, laughing. Life continued indifferent to their emotional storm. Nia broke eye contact first. I need space, she said softly. Not because I hate you, but because I'm afraid I still care. Those words pierced deeper than anger. I understand, he replied. That night, Ethan stood alone in his penthouse again. But this time, instead of numbing himself with work or distractions, he opened his laptop. He searched for the nonprofit she worked with, and quietly made a donation large enough to change hundreds of lives without attaching his name. Not as a grand gesture, but as a start. Meanwhile, Nia lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Her heart whispered what she didn't want to admit. He looks different. He sounds different. But can he truly be different? They both resisted. He resisted falling back into old patterns. She resisted falling back into old feelings. But fate wasn't done weaving their paths. Circumstances were about to force them closer. Closer than comfort. Closer than safety. Closer than either of them was ready for. When distance becomes impossible and feelings refuse to stay buried. The call came on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. Nia was reviewing event logistics at her office when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost ignored it. Almost. Hello, she answered. A calm, professional voice responded. Ms. Harrington, this is Caldwell Global's Community Impact Division. We'd like to formally partner with your nonprofit on a long-term youth development project. Her chest tightened. She already knew whose name stood behind the company. I'm listening, she replied cautiously. 2 days later, she found herself walking into a sleek conference room at Caldwell Global, a space once familiar, now emotionally dangerous. Floor-to-ceiling windows, polished glass table, muted luxury everywhere. And at the head of the table, Ethan Caldwell. He rose when he saw her, a subtle, respectful gesture. Nia, he greeted quietly. Ethan, she replied, professional but guarded. There were other executives present, but the emotional gravity centered on them. This wasn't a coincidence. This was fate insisting they confront what they'd been avoiding. A presentation began budgets, impact projections, mentorship programs. But under the surface of every professional exchange lived unspoken history. At one point, Ethan leaned toward her. I didn't arrange this to corner you, he murmured. But I won't pretend I didn't hope our worlds could align in a healthier way. She didn't look at him. Let's keep this about the children, she said quietly. Not about us. He nodded. As you wish. But something softened in his eyes, respect replacing entitlement. After the meeting, most attendees filtered out. Rain began tapping against the windows. Only Ethan and Nia remained, paperwork spread between them like a fragile truce. Thunder rolled faintly. Nia gathered her folder. I should go. The storm outside intensified. You'll get soaked, he said gently. Stay a moment. The rain will ease. She hesitated. Against her better judgment. She sat back down. Minutes passed. The city blurred behind rain-streaked glass. You seem different, she said finally. So do you, he replied. She almost smiled, but caught herself. You look tired, she added. He exhaled softly. I've been tired for 2 years. She knew what he meant, and it unsettled her. I used to think vulnerability was weakness, Ethan admitted quietly. That love made people exploitable. He paused. Then I lost you. His voice softened, and I realized I wasn't protecting myself. I was imprisoning myself. Her breath caught. You speak as if pain taught you humility, she said gently. It did, he replied. You did. She folded her arms, grounding herself. You don't see the nights I cried after you, she said quietly. The way I questioned my worth. The way I wondered why loving me felt like a risk you wouldn't take. His chest tightened visibly. I never deserved your heart, he said. That doesn't make the damage disappear, she replied. No, he whispered. But it makes me determined not to repeat it. Lightning flickered across the sky. The power dimmed briefly. Instinctively, they looked at each other, a reflex born from old familiarity. For a split second, it felt like before. Before pride. Before hurt. Before goodbye. And that realization frightened them both. You don't have to forgive me, Ethan said softly. I just want the chance to prove I can be better than the man who walked away. She studied him. You can't undo what happened, she said. But you can show whether you've grown from it. He nodded. I intend to. The rain finally softened. Nia stood. Thank you for the partnership, she said professionally. Then, quieter. And for not pretending we never mattered. He gave a faint, sincere smile. You mattered more than I ever admitted. She paused at the door. So did you, she said barely above a whisper. Then she left. That night, Ethan sat alone again, but instead of guilt, something new lived in his chest. Hope. Not reckless hope. Careful hope. Hope built on accountability. Nia, meanwhile, replayed the conversation in her mind. Her heart whispered something dangerous. He's not the same man anymore. But trusting that truth could either heal her or break her again. The past that shaped their pain and their capacity to love. The past has a way of resurfacing when hearts begin to soften. For both Ethan Caldwell and Nia Harrington, the present could no longer move forward without confronting the ghosts behind them. Ethan rarely spoke about his childhood, but one quiet evening, alone in his penthouse, he poured himself a drink he didn't want and stared at an old photograph in a drawer. A boy of 12, a tired-looking mother, a father standing at a distance. He remembered the night everything broke. Rain poured outside their modest home. His father stood by the door, suitcase in hand. I can't do this anymore, the man muttered. This family, this responsibility, it's suffocating. His mother cried, begged, collapsed into despair. 12-year-old Ethan stood frozen. Dad, he whispered. But his father didn't look back. The door slammed. And in that moment, Ethan learned a brutal lesson. Love leaves. Dependence is dangerous. Power means never needing anyone. He swore he would never feel that powerless again. Years later, as success piled on success, Ethan replaced vulnerability with ambition. Money became safety. Control became protection. Emotional distance became survival. And when he met Nia, warm, emotionally open, fearless in love, it terrified him. Because loving her meant risking abandonment. So when pressure mounted, he pushed her away first. Not because he didn't care, but because he cared too much. Across town, Nia sat with her mother at a small kitchen table. The air smelled of tea and warm spices. You've been quiet lately, her mother said gently. Is he back in your life? Nia nodded slowly. I'm trying not to let it affect me, she replied. Her mother reached across the table. You never told me how badly it hurt you. Nia hesitated, then finally opened her heart. Growing up, Nia watched her father promise things he never kept. I'll be there, he used to say. But birthdays passed. School events came and went. Promises faded into silence. Her mother held things together. But the emotional wound remained. People leave. Love isn't guaranteed. You must protect your heart even when it longs. So when Nia gave Ethan her love, it wasn't casual. It was brave. And when he walked away, it reopened a childhood wound she thought had healed. Neither of them had hurt the other out of cruelty. They had hurt each other out of fear. Fear of abandonment. Fear of vulnerability. Fear of loving too deeply. And now forced to face those truths, healing became possible. A week later, after a long day reviewing nonprofit outreach plans, Ethan invited Nia for coffee-neutral territory, no pressure. She almost declined. But curiosity and unresolved emotion drew her in. They sat across from each other in a quiet cafe. For once, no power imbalance. Just two people. I've never told you why I ended things the way I did, Ethan said softly. She listened. My father left when I was young, he admitted. I watched my mother fall apart. I promised myself I'd never depend on love again. His voice wavered barely. When I realized how much you meant to me, it scared me more than losing money ever could. Nia's chest tightened. You didn't just break up with me, she said quietly. You ran from your own fear. He nodded. I hurt you because I was afraid of needing you. She hesitated, then shared her truth. My father used to make promises he never kept, she said. So when you told me I mattered, I believed you. I trusted you with a heart I already feared losing. Her eyes shimmered. When you walked away, it felt like history repeating itself. Pain crossed Ethan's face. I never wanted to become that man, he whispered. But you did, she replied gently, not cruelly. Silence settled, not hostile, but heavy with realization. For the first time, they weren't enemies. They weren't ex-lovers trapped in bitterness. They were two wounded people finally understanding each other. You don't owe me another chance, Ethan said quietly. But I owe you accountability. She studied him. And I owe myself protection, she replied. Then softer. But maybe. I don't owe myself permanent isolation. A fragile smile touched his lips. Maybe we both deserve healing, he said. They left the cafe without promises. Without pressure. But with something new. Honesty. Empathy. A foundation for redemption. They begin to soften, reconnect, laugh, and open up. A fragile bond forms. Hope grows, but remains delicate. When two guarded hearts begin to feel safe again. Some healing doesn't happen through grand gestures. It happens through quiet moments, shared laughter, and emotional honesty that feels fragile but real. For Ethan Caldwell and Nia Harrington, this was the first time in years that being near each other didn't feel like walking through fire. Their collaboration on the nonprofit project deepened. Meetings turned into conversations. Conversations turned into shared memories. One afternoon, they reviewed student success stories together. Nia smiled as she scrolled through photos of kids whose lives had been changed. This is why I do what I do, she said softly. Ethan watched her not as a billionaire, not as a strategist, but as a man who admired her heart. You've always had a gift for seeing people, he said. Not just their potential, but their worth. She teased gently. You didn't always appreciate that. He chuckled, a rare, genuine laugh. I'm learning. Later that week, they attended a youth mentorship event together. A teenage boy recognized Ethan. Are you really that billionaire guy? The boy asked. Ethan smirked lightly. I guess I am. The boy turned to Nia. Is he always this serious? Nia laughed before she could stop herself. No, she said playfully. He just thinks being serious makes him powerful. Ethan looked at her, amused. And does it? He asked. She smiled. Not as much as being human. The word lingered. Human. Something Ethan had once buried beneath ambition. One evening, after a long planning session, Ethan hesitated. Would you like to have dinner? He asked gently. No expectations. No emotional pressure. Just food. Nia paused then nodded. All right, she said. Just dinner. They chose a quiet restaurant, not luxurious, just warm. Candlelight flickered between them. For a while, they talked about harmless things. Favorite childhood movies. Music. Books. Travel dreams. Then laughter surfaced, hesitant at first, then natural. You used to laugh like this, Ethan said softly. Before I complicated everything. She softened. You used to smile more, she replied. Before you started pretending you didn't need anyone. Their eyes met. Something old stirred, but gentler now. Later, walking outside beneath streetlights, silence wrapped around them. I missed this, Ethan admitted quietly. Not the past, but the feeling of being honest. Nia folded her arms loosely. I missed feeling safe with you, she confessed. The words trembled between them. You don't have to trust me again, he said. I just want to earn the right to stand beside you without causing pain. She studied him, deeply. You're different, she whispered. Not perfect, but different. He nodded. I'm trying to be worthy of the love I once mishandled. Outside her apartment, they paused. The night was calm. You don't have to rush anything, Ethan said. We can move at your pace. She appreciated that. Thank you, she said quietly. Before stepping away, she added, I don't know where this leads, but I don't want to close the door anymore. Hope flickered in his eyes. That's more than I deserve, he replied. Over the following weeks, they shared coffee mornings, late-night phone calls, honest conversations about fear, love, and growth. Small moments that rebuilt emotional safety. For the first time since their heartbreak, it felt like healing might actually be possible. Even as warmth returned, fear lingered. Nia worried. What if he changes back? Ethan feared. What if I'm too late? Their hearts were opening, but still cautious. And fate was preparing the ultimate test. When fear wins, love almost breaks forever. Happiness, when fragile, can feel like borrowed time. For weeks, Ethan Caldwell and Nia Harrington had been rebuilding something delicate: trust, warmth, emotional safety. Not rushing, not pretending, not erasing the past. But healing doesn't erase old triggers. Sometimes it exposes them. One morning, headlines exploded across financial news. Caldwell Global announces merger with Grayford Industries. At first, it seemed like just another corporate move, until Nia read deeper. Grayford Industries had a history one tied to unethical practices in minority communities. Her chest tightened. She called Ethan immediately. "Is this true?" she asked when he answered. There was a pause. "Yes," he admitted carefully. "But it's more complicated than the headlines suggest." Her voice hardened. "Complicated enough to hurt the same communities I fight to protect." Later that day, they met at his office. Tension sat between them like a loaded weapon. "You promised you were changing," Nia said tightly. "You promised your success wouldn't come at the cost of people like me." "I am changing," he replied, frustrated. "This merger gives me leverage to reform them from the inside." She shook her head. "That sounds like the same man who chose reputation over love." The words stung because they echoed his greatest shame. "That's not fair," he snapped before he could stop himself. Silence followed. His tone sharp, defensive, sounded too much like the old Ethan. And Nia heard it. "So this is it," she said quietly. "When pressure rises, you revert." "That's not true," he insisted. "I'm trying to balance responsibility and growth." "But you didn't even talk to me," she replied. "You made another major decision that impacts people like me without considering how it would feel." Pain flared in her eyes. Just like before. His chest tightened. "That's not what this is," he said, but the words felt weaker than the fear between them. "You told me you were different," Nia said, voice trembling. "You told me you'd learned from hurting me." "I have," he said urgently. "But I'm still human. I still make difficult choices." She stepped back. "No," she whispered. "You still make lonely choices." The sentence hit him harder than any insult. Her voice cracked. "I let myself believe in you again," she admitted. "I let myself hope you wouldn't choose power over love this time." His frustration melted into horror. "That's not what I'm doing," he said softly. "But it feels the same," she replied. And feelings, not logic, ruled this battlefield. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, overwhelmed. "You're asking me to choose between my company and our future," he said too bluntly. Her face fell. "So that's how you see it," she whispered. "An ultimatum." He realized instantly he'd said the wrong thing. But it was too late. Her eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. "You're still the man who walked away," she said quietly. "Just wearing a kinder mask." Silence stretched between them. This time, Ethan tried to reach for her. "Nia, please." She stepped back. "Don't," she said softly. "I won't relive that pain." She turned and walked away. Again. But this time, it felt final. The door closed, and Ethan finally cracked. He slammed his fist lightly against the desk, not in rage, but despair. "I ruined it," he whispered to the empty room. Memories flooded back. The first time she left. The tears he ignored. The regret that followed. He dropped into a chair, burying his face in his hands. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel powerful. He felt afraid of losing love forever. Meanwhile, Nia sat alone in her apartment. Tears spilled freely now. "I knew better," she whispered to herself. "I knew not to trust him again." Her phone buzzed. Ethan calling. She let it ring. Her heart ached. She still loved him, but loving him had once nearly broken her. And she wasn't sure she could survive that twice. Both of them lay awake that night. Ethan stared at the ceiling, thinking, what if guilt isn't enough? What if redemption comes too late? Nia stared into darkness, thinking, what if love always means pain? What if choosing him means losing myself? Their bond, once slowly healing, now seemed shattered. And for the first time, it felt like love might not win. When love demands humility and redemption requires risk, silence can be louder than shouting. For days after their argument, Ethan Caldwell felt trapped inside a quiet he couldn't outrun. No boardroom could distract him. No deal could silence the ache. No amount of money could fix what he had broken. Again. Late one night, he stood on the balcony of his penthouse, staring at the city lights. He thought about power, about control, about how often he had chosen safety over sincerity. He whispered to the wind, "I'm tired of being afraid." For years, he had believed strength meant never needing anyone. But losing Nia twice taught him something terrifying and true. Real strength is choosing love, even when it risks pain. The next morning, Ethan shocked his board. "I'm pulling out of the Grayford merger," he said calmly. Executives stared at him in disbelief. "That deal is worth billions," one protested. He nodded. "I won't build my success on values that contradict the man I'm trying to become." Silence followed. This wasn't a PR move. This wasn't strategy. This was accountability. For the first time, Ethan Caldwell chose integrity over image, not for reputation, but for conscience. Across town, Nia sat with Maya, stirring a cup of tea she wasn't drinking. "He hurt you again," Maya said gently. "You don't owe him another chance." "I know," Nia replied quietly. But I also know he's trying," she admitted. "And I don't want fear to decide my future." Her voice softened. "I don't want to live closed off because of pain." Maya squeezed her hand. "Then choose what brings you peace, not what protects old wounds." Instead of calling or texting, Ethan did something different. He wrote her a handwritten letter. No excuses, no justifications, no pressure, only truth. "Nia, I finally understand what it means to choose love without conditions. Not when it's easy, not when it protects my image, but when it costs me pride, comfort, and certainty. You don't owe me forgiveness. You don't owe me another chance. But I owe you proof, not promises, that I'm no longer the man who ran from love. If walking away brings you peace, I will respect it. If you ever believe I'm worthy of standing beside you again, I will spend my life honoring that trust." Ethan. When the envelope arrived, Nia stared at it for a long time before opening it. As she read, tears gathered, not from pain this time, but from recognition. He wasn't begging. He wasn't demanding. He wasn't manipulating. He was owning his growth. Her heart whispered, "He's finally choosing love over fear." Days later, she asked him to meet her at the same cafe where they once shared their deepest truths. He arrived early, nervous, hopeful, humbled. When she walked in, his breath caught. "Thank you for coming," she said gently. "Thank you for asking," he replied. "I read your letter," Nia began. He nodded, bracing himself. "You didn't try to defend yourself," she said. "You didn't try to control the outcome." "I don't want control anymore," he admitted quietly. "I want honesty, even if it costs me." She looked at him steadily. "You hurt me," she said, "and trusting you again feels terrifying." "I know," he whispered. "But," she continued softly, "I see effort, growth, responsibility." She paused. "And I don't want my life to be built on fear of being hurt." His voice trembled, no armor left. "I love you," he said quietly, "not in the selfish way I used to, but in a way that respects your freedom, your strength, your worth." He swallowed. "And if loving you means risking rejection for the rest of my life, I'll take that risk." Tears shimmered in her eyes. "For so long," she said, "I thought choosing you meant betraying myself." She stepped closer. "But I realize now. Choosing love doesn't mean losing myself if love honors who I am." She inhaled shakily. "I won't pretend the pain never happened, but I'm willing to move forward, not because I forgot, but because I see who you're becoming." Silence hung between them, trembling with possibility. Then Nia reached for his hand. Not desperately, not impulsively, but intentionally. His breath hitched. "I won't promise perfection," she said, "but I'm willing to try again." Tears filled his eyes. "That's more than I ever deserved," he whispered. "But maybe," she smiled softly, "it's what we both deserve now." They didn't rush. They didn't kiss yet. They simply sat, hands intertwined, hearts open. For the first time, their love was built on honesty, humility, and choice, not fear. When love wins and guilt transforms into redemption, some endings don't feel like conclusions. They feel like homecoming. For Ethan Caldwell and Nia Harrington, love no longer meant fear, pride, or emotional survival. Now love meant choice, growth, respect, healing. Weeks passed, but this time, they didn't rush anything. There were no dramatic announcements, no media spectacle, no pressure, just quiet effort. Ethan showed up consistently, not with expensive gifts, not with grand gestures, but with listening, accountability, emotional presence, patience. Nia noticed everything. The way he apologized when he was wrong, the way he asked before assuming, the way he prioritized integrity over ego. This version of Ethan felt real. Not perfect, but honest. One evening, they walked through a park lit by golden sunset. Children laughed nearby. A soft breeze carried the scent of flowers. "This feels different," Nia said quietly. "It is," Ethan replied. "I'm not trying to impress you anymore. I'm trying to honor you." She smiled. "And I'm not trying to protect myself from love anymore," she said. "I'm letting love exist without fear." He looked at her, eyes warm, sincere. "You make me want to be better," he said. "You make me believe love can be safe," she replied. Weeks later, Ethan invited her to the same building where he had once broken her heart. Not to reopen wounds, but to close them. They stood in his old office. Rain tapped gently against the windows, just like that painful night years ago. He looked at her. "This is where I failed you," he said quietly. "This is where I chose fear over love." She nodded calm, not wounded. "And this is where you choose differently now," she said softly. He took her hands. "I can't undo the pain," he whispered. "But I promise I will never run from you again." Tears shimmered in her eyes. "And I promise," she replied, "I won't punish you forever for the man you used to be." They stood in silence. Not broken, but healed. That night, standing beneath the city lights, Ethan finally allowed himself to be fully vulnerable. "I love you," he said steady, no fear. Not as a possession, not as a secret, but as a partner. Nia smiled through tears. "I love you too," she said. "Not because I forgot the past, but because you proved the future can be different." This time, when he kissed her, it wasn't desperate. It wasn't fearful. It wasn't impulsive. It was earned, and it felt like peace. Months later, Ethan publicly launched a foundation supporting underserved communities inspired by Nia's work. But he never took credit. He told reporters simply, "I learned that success means nothing if it costs your humanity." Nia watched him speak proud, moved. Later, she teased him. "You've grown." He smiled softly. "You saved me." She shook her head. "No," she said. "You chose to grow." One evening, they sat on her balcony, city lights glowing below. Ethan held her hand. "I don't want to lose you again," he said. "You won't," she replied gently. "Not because love is guaranteed, but because we choose it every day." He looked at her with quiet certainty. "And I'll keep choosing you," he said. "Not out of guilt, not out of fear, but out of love." Tears filled her eyes. "That's all I ever wanted," she whispered. The billionaire who once feared love became the man who honored it. The woman who once feared abandonment became the woman who trusted again. Guilt transformed into growth. Pain transformed into power. Love transformed into home. And this time, love stayed. If someone hurt you but truly changed, would you give love another chance? Tell us what you believe in the comments.